First up on general business is verification that the meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Stacey, thank you very much. Next up would be opportunity for citizens to speak. Is there anybody that would like to address the committee outside of our wonderful employees? No, that's it, huh? And our awesome students. All righty. Moving on to our bright lights, part we always love here. Our bright lights will be Hillcrest Growing Community, Growing Learners. You're on.
Well, thank you for the opportunity for us to share our story tonight.
Thanks for coming.
This is really a good year of work in progress as we have been developing our identity. Who are we and what do we aspire to be as the Hillcrest community? And our logo, which isn't projecting up right now. We've got I'm not sure if the Apple TV is up and running yet. Should I try again? Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Technology.
We even did a trial to make sure this works.
We have to talk to the chair of that committee.
But in conversations with families and with students and with staff last year, we really are focusing on this idea of growing community, growing curiosity, and growing learners. And so what we're going to share today is all about that growing community part. We knew that was an important core thing to start with.
I got it. Mrs. Linscomb.
You going to give it a whirl? Okay. So my name is Faith Linscomb, and I'm the principal. Chris Holloway, our math effectiveness coach, is here with us today. And then I'm going to pass this on to our two teachers who are also members of our SAIL team, and they're going to introduce their students.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Schultz, and I'm a third grade teacher at Hillcrest, and I brought with me here today Caroline Hike, and we also have Landon Fila.
I'm Abby Lauer. I'm the second grade literacy teacher at Hillcrest, and I brought Kiana Schatzman and Easton Hoyt with me today.
Okay, so there's our logo that has actually written in there, growing community, growing curiosity, growing learners. And then Mr. Holloway is going to speak to our visual that was created at the SAIL launch this summer.
So this was created with the idea that SAIL thank you.
You're welcome.
That SAIL is what we use to grow students each and every day. So you can see that is the handle or the lever of the magnifying glass. On the inside of the magnifying glass is PLCs, which is what we're using. That's our main tool that we're using to really grow our learners. You can see collaboration with a growth mindset is the energy or the power behind all of this. And at the heart of it is, of course, student achievement, but besides student achievement and to grow that student achievement, we're also seeing that we need to grow our students as their social emotional learning. So that is a huge focus, and to do that, we're using community and building community within our classrooms to build that social emotional learning, and then all of that together to really develop discourse within the classroom. And all of that together is what we're using to really grow our students.
So we began the work with ourselves, and we've had an important focus on developing and deepening the collaboration among all of the adults in our building. And we're doing this through some work. We're reading the book Culturize, which is just an amazing text for understanding our purpose for teaching and helping us have a springboard for conversations around why we're here and how we're all in for kids. And we're also using the text Onward as something to guide our work to understand our identity as teachers and how that grows into how we interact with each other, building the resiliency of everyone involved. teaching is challenging. And we want to set up a culture where we have a growth mindset, where we know we have the capacity within our own building, within our own staff, with all of the talent that we have to solve all the problems that come our way. It doesn't take somebody outside telling or showing us or a package to do what we need to do. It really is within all of us. And so after we began to develop that work with teachers, then we're also growing that work with our students. And now we're going to pass it on to our younger friends here.
All right, back to Mrs. Schultz's third grade literacy group. We have, if we can flip to that next slide, we have some pictures here of second and third grade, but we'll start with third grade and talk about the things that we do in the community circle, so you have an idea of what it looks like and might feel like. So I'll hand that off to our students to share a little bit about some of the things that we do. And these are things that we take a few minutes out of our day, probably in the morning and sometimes in the afternoon, and then again right before we close at the end of the day. So here's Caroline Hike.
So one of the things that we do in the morning is we tell each other how we feel, and we call those the zones of regulation. And there's different colors. There's blue, green, yellow, and red. Blue means you're sad, tired, and shy, and that kind of stuff. Green, you're feeling okay and you're ready to learn. Yellow means you're silly or you're worried. And red means you're angry or you're really scared, hitting. And we also do greetings too. So we greet each other. We have a secret class handshake that we sometimes do, but otherwise sometimes we just do high fives or waves. And I guess that's it. So we play relationship building games. So I guess for games we do this one game called Telephone, where somebody starts off with a sentence and it goes around the circle, and it depends. So whatever it starts off and what it ends with, and see how close you are. And it really means is how we can spread rumors around and how it changes people. And you can say something that isn't true, and it goes around and it turns into different things. We also play a game called Alibi, which is a game where there's a detective and then there's somebody that's telling a lie, and you go around the circle and one person tells two different things, and then the detective has to find out who the wrong person is. Then we play Pass the Bunny, which is where somebody counts in counts in a chair, and then you pass the bunny around, and whenever they stop, whoever ends with the bunny gets to count, and then we keep on going around with that. And then there's, hide the potato. So you take a toy potato and you hide it around the room, and you have to find it in a short period of time. Thank you.
All right, and my two friends are going to be sharing how we start our day and how our community circle works. And then the other day I was actually thinking about, as teachers, we always think about the why and why we do things. And I was wondering, I wonder why my kids think we do community circle. So there was an anchor chart up there where I gave kids a sticky note one morning, and I just said, write down why you think we do it. And so they're going to share a list of the things that my students came up with. This is Kiana and Easton.
So we have a glitter jar, and so we shake it and put it in the middle, and we get a lot of time to think. And then, first my teacher picks a stick, and then they read it off, and then we pass it around the circle, saying what we think it is, and then we get to hear what people think about what the question is.
Share some of the questions.
And some of the questions.
Pull some out.
Some of the questions are this one is, what is something you could do to show kindness today? And then then we'd say, like, if it was, like, high five a person, if you could say, like, high five a person that you don't know. And then another one is, what is one thing that you're really excited about? Like, if you were really excited about something that you got to do, you could say what that was. We do community circle so we can remember, so people pass the glitter jar around and they say stuff that is like, say what is something you could do to show kindness today, and say someone say to remember like second grade expectations and to make people happy so they could have a great day.
So do you want to share some of your list?
So some of the things that people said on the Post-its were to remember second grade expectations and to make people happy so we can learn about our feelings and actions. We can have a good day, to help problems be solved, and to be a kind, loving person, to relax, to make people happy and get together, to make your day better, to get together, to help people be happy, and to think about how we make it a better day, or to make someone feel happy. Some examples are to calm down and see what other people are feeling, to get together, to learn, to share things like what we did over the weekend, to show how you can be nice and kind in school, to have a better day, and to make school a better place, to share kindness, to get together, and to talk about how to be kind, respectful, and helpful, and responsible.
Yeah, so I was really surprised because we never really talked about the why ever since we first started, so it was kind of cool to see all the different responses that came from it.
Another quick thing is you might see the picture at the bottom right-hand corner. We had a student recently leave our group and go to another school. And I think there was such a tight bond created among all the students in our class that she actually knew the kids so well, she created an individualized, personalized picture for each student to represent their personality. And for kids to know each other that well and to miss each other that much after 4 months of school, I think speaks volumes to how far this can take us.
So the work really began to make sure kids were felt connected and to make sure that they were all coming to school. If they weren't ready to learn, they were ready to learn by the time we slid into our academics. But it very quickly morphed into some deep problem solving across the classroom and within classrooms, in between like the second grade classrooms or the third grade classrooms as they were teaming. And teachers have already jumped into some of the pieces that we were looking at for our social emotional learning practices, like using the zones of regulation, like making sure that there are opportunities in every classroom for kids to feel safe and comfortable through flexible seating and the use of Zen zones that we have in most classrooms now, the practices around mindfulness. And the community circle also becomes a place where the lessons that are taught during second steps can be processed and they can talk about what happened on the playground as it relates to some of that new learning. And so we call these model classroom practices, but they've really taken off quickly. And teacher collaboration around that has happened through flexible professional development and also through the PLC conversations. So I want to thank my friends for their great job tonight. Thank you. And thank you for your time.
Comments, questions? Mr. Baumgart?
I want to ask the children something. I'm not sure, but I think it was you that said something about being excited.
Yeah, so
Let me just ask you, were you excited about being here tonight? Good. We're glad to see that because that's very important. Now, and somebody also talked about happy. I think almost all of you talked about happy and being happy yourselves and happy with other kids. Do you know that we learn better when we're happy? That's true, isn't it? Go ahead, tell me.
I think we learn better because when you're sad, you don't think as well as when you're happy. You get to, think better and think happy thoughts while you're doing your,
Right, thank you. Thanks for your presentation.
Zink.
Well, it just brings me such great joy to see how happiness remains and kindness remains at Hillcrest School. I'm so very proud that over all the years since I've been gone, that kindness still is so important to learning, and you realize that. And you children make it such a happy school for your teachers, and your teachers make it a happy school for you. I'm so proud of you. I'm going to come visit you. Will you let me come?
Yes.
Great. I got to come back and see how wonderful it is. Thank you.
Anything else? Spectacular. Oh, Mr. Dietz.
I just wanted to say to all the students that all the lessons you've learned through mindfulness and zones of regulations and everything else about community building, the example you've been tonight has, I think, been really good for the adults that are here, because there are times when I think more of us should be using some of those same strategies to develop community. So thank you very much for the example that you were tonight, and to show us that it really can work, and it is the direction that we should all be headed towards. So thank you very much.
That's right.
Spectacular. Thank you very much for coming and sharing some of your time with us this evening. We look forward to it.
Doesn't that make you feel good?
Yes, feels good, doesn't it?
Oh, it means the world.
All the hard work.
Alrighty, next up would be our action items. First action item of the evening is approval of the teaching and learning minutes from December 4th, 2018 meeting. I'll be looking for a motion.
Approve.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgart. A second. Mrs. Brusink. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Moving on to our approval of open enrollment space availability for the 2019-20 school year.
Well, thank you. Annually, the Board of Ed has to approve the open enrollment availability. For the vast majority of the history of open enrollment, this has been done at the board meeting. Last year, there was a request to go through committee. The reason why we wait up until almost the last minute to do this is because we want to make sure that we have the best possible projection that we can formulate for what our enrollment is going to be next year. The whole practice of open enrollment, approving the space for open enrollment is kind of a tricky thing, because you're trying to project 8 months out the number of kids that are going to be in your schools. So by January, the January board meeting, you have to approve it, but you're making your best guess on who's going to show up next year. So what you have in front of you is a few tables. The first table there addresses the projected enrollment by grade level in our district from 4-year-old kindergarten through 12th grade for next year. What we are proposing is in the far right column, you can see the number of seats that are available across all grades. The ideal scenario under open enrollment is to allow as many students in as you can possibly allow in, and not add staff. So what you see in front of you is based off of what our staffing is, where we have some projected seats available. We do not have to be limited by this. So what we're doing is setting a minimum number that we would take at each grade. If we were to have 100 K4 students show up next year and we had space to serve all of them, we would accept all of them. But 28 is the minimum that we would be able to take. You can see that we have a number of grades that are closed. If you know some of the conversations around proposed budgets and everything like that for next year, we are in a declining enrollment trend. Open enrollment doesn't make up enough money to try to close that gap. So what we're projecting is 0 seats in those grades. Again, if we're in a situation that's different, we could add students. What we are also proposing is that anybody who applies to our district and is in a grade level where we have 0 seats, they will be offered a seat at eAchieve Academy. eAchieve is unlimited for open enrollment. In essence, all of eAchieve's enrollment is open enrollment. So we have avenues and availability at eAchieve to serve the students that come to us. The second table that you see on the back page is our special education programs. For next year, as we've done as far as back as I can find in our records, you see that we are projecting 0 spaces. A few weeks back, I looked at where our special ed enrollment is. We were at 2,013 students in the district who are currently receiving special education services. That number continues to increase while the resident number continues to decrease. So we are not proposing to add any space in special education, so that will be closed. Any student who is denied space from us will be put on a wait list, and should there be space available, we will serve them if we can.
Questions, Mrs. Brzezinski?
Yeah, so are you saying there's no seats available in any school next year because you had 0, 0, 0, 0?
We're not allowing anybody in at those grades, correct. We have to account
Open enrollment.
for open
Yeah, I know.
enrollment.
Open enrollment.
I know.
For open enrollment. We cannot put ourselves in a position where we are adding students in open enrollment and not able to address a more
Our own
broader
students.
budget conversation.
So when you talk about open enrollment, you're talking about kids from different districts?
Correct. Anybody who's does not live in Waukesha who's applying
Right,
to come here.
right.
Yep.
Wow.
Anybody who's in the district as an open enrolled student is considered to be then a resident student.
Okay.
So they are here.
They can stay.
The only thing that can change for those students is we have the ability to place them at a different school should that be necessary.
I see that grade 3 on the front page is pretty large, isn't it?
That is quite a few seats. The thing that also needs to be accounted for is the fact that we have 14 elementary schools. So in essence, if you took that 87 and you divided it by 14, that's potentially how many kids then would be spread out across the district.
Gotcha.
It doesn't come in a district our size with as many locations and as many sections as we have. It does not become neat and easy to say, we're not going to run a section.
Right.
If our district were a lot smaller and we were to see this type of space, you'd be able to look at a third grade section, say at 2 elementary schools, and be able to make a decision around staffing. We've got so many schools with so many sections, it's a little bit more challenging.
So what you're saying is if a student moves in a neighborhood where there's a school and the school has, no room, you still have to take that student because it's in the neighborhood, correct?
And we have to account
Yes.
for that in our
Yes.
projections. So
Yes.
any student who moves into an attendance area
Yes.
location would have priority to
Right.
go to that attendance
Yeah,
area.
I think it's important to note that for people that, may be listening or people that are going to move into our district that they know, despite the fact that we have, not much room, that their students can still get in.
Correct. And this
Yes.
this is not our enrollment, it is our open enrollment.
Right.
Open enrollment, right,
Outside.
right, thank you.
And so we do have this as an action item tonight for committee, then for the whole board to take an action on tomorrow.
Mrs. Roddy?
Yes, thank you. I just have a question. 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph on the front page, the last sentence. Joe, just some clarification on that. It says the district dual language program may be accessed by students who are open enrolled. However, families cannot apply to the program through open enrollment, just the district.
Correct.
What does
So
that
you-
last half mean?
You only can apply to the school district. You cannot apply to the Waukesha schools to go to North High School. You can't apply to the Waukesha schools to go to East. You can't apply to the Waukesha schools for STEM. You can't apply to the Waukesha schools. You have to apply to the district first, be accepted into the district, and then be able to access a program. So you must get accepted into our district under open enrollment first before you can do
Okay.
anything else. And you can't just apply for a program. That the open enrollment only grants you a seat in the district. It does not grant you a seat in the program.
But if you live in the neighborhood of
That
North
is-
High School.
Again, this is open enrollment. This isn't for, this is
Okay,
not
open
for a
enrollment. Yeah,
resident
you're right.
student.
Okay, gotcha.
I have
not what I thought it was.
one question. The K4, the
Yes.
28 seats, does that include our community partners?
This includes all of our locations, yes.
Alrighty. So we'll be looking for a motion to approve.
I move to approve open enrollment space availability for 2019-2020 as presented.
Mrs. Brezink, is there a second? Mr. Dietz, second. Any other discussion? Questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Moving on. Our next approval item is overnight field trips. Alrighty. So, got 3 of them, it looks like. Right? 4? 4. Any concerns?
Just dawned on me now, I have a question.
Yes?
Overnight to another state, Washington DC, didn't we put some kind of a kibosh on that? For middle school?
This is, this is for students who are after they
Oh, I'm
complete
sorry,
eighth grade.
that's the word right there.
This summer, right?
Yeah, thank you.
It's summer, okay.
Good catch. Anything else?
Yes.
Brezink.
I'm looking at the trip to, the choir trip to New York City, okay? And the price per student is somewhere between $1,150 to $1,300. Now, I'm assuming that that includes transportation, hotel, food, and tour fees. Is that correct? The kids won't have to pay for anything else, of course, just have spending money to do whatever they want. Yes? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so it runs about $320 per day in New York City, and that includes food and hotel. That's pretty good. I think it is.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not
considering
cheap, but
a
it's
very expensive
it's
city
because
to
very
visit.
it's a very expensive place to go.
Yeah, and you can see their fundraising opportunities on the back. I think
Yeah, I
there's
did.
a lot of
I noted that. Yes. Okay, and I noted too that if I may ask another question, please.
Most definitely.
Okay, I noticed that they're traveling by bus, and are they going to get on that bus and stay on the bus until they get to New York? I'm assuming, because it doesn't say anything about stopping along the way, so it looks like that they're going to drive straight through. Is that correct?
I would assume that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Long trip. Oh, yeah,
There you go.
without a doubt.
Another
yeah.
chaperone.
I'd love to chaperone, absolutely. I'd love to be with those kids. That'd be fun to be with high school kids. That'd be great. Okay, I just want to be sure that, that's a long trip, one day there. Because they're going to be in that bus 20 hours or more, right? Yeah. Yeah, I would think so.
20 hours would be a long trip, but it
Well,
maybe.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. It's a long, I mean, they'll stop along the way to eat, maybe go to the bathroom, et cetera, but yeah, I would say 20 hours, yeah. Easily. Well, got to be pretty strong, and the teachers better be wide awake.
Lots of coffee.
Wonderful
Miss-
trip. Wonderful trip.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Mr. Baumgart.
I always question when we're going into foreign countries, the opportunity or the option of getting out of that if something is wrong, getting all of our money back.
They're using a tour company, so there's provisions for that, and they can also purchase trip insurance if they would like to.
Okay, thank you.
Talking about the trip from Ecuador, right? That's the trip you're talking
Yeah,
about.
not,
right?
not Washington.
No, I was
DC,
just saying,
that's close.
New York is in the States still.
Thanks, Patrick.
Okay, anything
Okay,
else?
you're ahead too.
Yeah, he's ahead a
That's
little bit. I
okay.
wanted to make sure that everybody
Yeah,
understood
that's
that.
okay. That's okay. Okay, let me see if I have a question there.
Anything else? Got a lot of writing on there.
Yeah, well, I make a lot of notes.
Why we love you on this committee.
Yeah, I'm just so thrilled that they're going to Ecuador. Wow, that's pretty good. Oh, I know, I was concerned about general terms and conditions, the second page, on the right-hand side, what happens if EF has to cancel or modify a tour? And then it says that, way at the bottom, if EF cancels the tour for any reasons, travelers will receive EF future travel vouchers rather than for all monies paid less $95 for the refundable deposit. And what does that mean? That they would have to then take a tour with EF? Maybe they're out of high school, you know? What would they want to do on a tour with EF? Is that true?
Fact,
It
and I guess
is.
that's for the parent and the student to ultimately decide when they read.
Yeah, it makes me a little uncomfortable because, you know, if my kids were out of high school, they wouldn't want to go on a trip like that. But of course, it doesn't mean that you have to go with a high school. It just means, you know, you would go on your own. So that part is good, but very interesting that they would just get future travel with EF, even if they're out of high school. Interesting. But that's the way it goes, right? Okay.
All right, anything else?
I move for approval.
Okay, I have one more.
Okay.
On the second last page, where it says cancellation policy, under EF standard cancellation policy, it says 44 days or less prior to departure, no refund will be issued. And I'm wondering, you know, there are emergencies, and I think, wow, that's pretty different, you know. What if somebody dies, you know, a week before? Can't count on 44 days. Wow, that's not very flexible. That's the only concern I have.
I would mention, Barb, that I think that, I don't know all of the language of the trip insurance policy,
Yeah, I
but
was
I
gonna say,
believe
there's
that there
gotta be
might be something
insurance.
involved in that.
Yeah,
Well,
They
yeah.
have the option to purchase that.
right.
Because it says 44 days or less prior to departure, no refund will be issued. I'm thinking, wow, you know, what if somebody,
If you have the insurance
Yeah,
companies will
but-
refund you.
unfortunately, some people can't afford the insurance and,
Well, also, this trip is for next school year, so
I
they
underst-
have plenty of time to do all their fundraising.
is
and
true.
Our
That is true.
policy requires 18 months for the request,
I
so that's
understand.
the reason why.
yeah, I understand, but things happen and could be unfortunate circumstance for some families, but whatever. Let's hope it doesn't happen.
Great. Mr. Baumgart,
I move for approval of the overnight travel.
thank you. Is there a second? Mrs. Roddy? Any other questions, concerns, comments regarding the overnight requests? Nothing? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? 5-0. Excellent. That brings our action items to a close. Next up is information items. Our first information item is the AT-ODA District Update. How would you pronounce that acronym? We got
AT-ODA.
Okay, that's what I thought. I didn't want to, you know, a TODA.
A TODA.
You could say that.
That works too,
you know.
but not commonly used.
Doesn't sound as
Right
cool as.
north of the Dakotas.
This would be good. Good evening, board members. Happy to be in front of
Good
you
evening,
again
Luke.
this month with more proactive preventative updates around alcohol, tobacco, and other drug abuse intervention and prevention efforts that we have going on throughout the district. It's my pleasure to introduce Jody Ebbinger Bentley. She is not only our East Alternative High School school social worker, she's also the district-wide AODA coordinator. So I will let her take it from here and talk about some of our collaborations and our efforts this year and last year.
All right, well, thank you for this opportunity. So last year, this is my second year in the district, and so last year when I started, I was really excited about the role as the AODA coordinator, but there really wasn't a job description or anything that really kind of paved the way for that I could just kind of jump into. So what I decided to do was really just trying to get a feel for different coalitions and things going on in Waukesha County that the previous coordinators have been involved in. And so and just really start networking with community providers and county government and nonprofits. And so, which led me to the Waukesha County Drug-Free Communities, which is just a really great coalition of private sector, public sector. They've really welcomed Luke and I's involvement this year on the different committees. So Luke is on the leadership team, and I also participate on the program committee. So basically, I attend the monthly big coalition meetings and kind of give input and receive information. And then I also am a participant on the program committee, and we basically are planning different prevention efforts in Waukesha County. So last May, we had a National Prevention Night held at the Civic Theater, which I helped to promote within our schools, and also a video contest that our students could be involved in. And then this past October, we planned a community night. It happened to be in McGuanago, but you know, I was still a part of that and just helping to provide the prevention and coordinate still with other school districts and things like that to keep things going. So that's been a really, really helpful in just kind of me figuring out like who to partner with and who we can kind of bring in to help us with the prevention efforts.
And I will add that our partnership and our involvement in drug-free communities extends beyond my time here. My predecessor, Ms. Thede, was also involved actively with that coalition as well.
And so through that coalition, we have really had a really strong relationship with Elevate Incorporated, which is a nonprofit based out of Washington County, but now has expanded into Waukesha County, and with Adam Kidred, their director of prevention programming. And so through getting to know him and trying to find out what other prevention programming was going on in other districts, he last year presented the Peers for Peers program, which is an evidence-based peer program to really help with mental health assistance and also AODA prevention, but it's youth-led. So the youth are trained to become peer helpers and agents of change within their building. So although we have advisors, actually all of our advisors are student service personnel right now in the 3 high schools. The youth really take the lead in the meetings. They take the lead in what kind of activities they want to do in the school to try to promote different prevention efforts. So as an example, North High School is working on a prevention program for vaping, and so they created posters, and they're working on a video right now also that will be like shown in their advisory classes to kind of market that message of prevention of vaping, since that's a huge problem that they see in their school, well, in all of our schools right now. So and so the peers are also go through extensive training actually about mandated reporting and how to be like active listening, but also knowing how to refer to a student service personnel or others when need be. So they're not taking on the role of that counselor necessarily, but more of that just peer helper and listener. And so that's done right now pretty informally in all 3 high schools, where they kind of just look for students that might be sitting alone in the cafeteria or might be needing a friend to help them out, or maybe they see someone who's stressed out in their class and they take the initiative to make sure everything's okay with them. In the future, we'd really like to set up something a little bit more formal, where if students have study halls, our peer helpers have study halls, that they could actually be available for students to come down and talk with them, because our survey data shows that most students aren't going to seek out student service personnel, although we're sure busy. But still, the majority of students are more likely to talk to a peer about an issue that's going on versus, an adult or even a trusted teacher. They're still more comfortable with a peer. So we've got all those groups going, and they've been through 2 full days of training already. So, and this is just kind of some. I know it's kind of little, but I just thought I'd throw it up there that our our membership is a little smaller this year because we just started this school year. But all groups are pretty vibrant and really working to affect their school climate and really get the word out there. Today I was at South for their peers meeting, and they were planning on how they wanted to kind of promote themselves and also promote the message that it's really okay to be drug-free, and and that there is support and not everybody's doing the negative stuff. So it was pretty exciting. All right. So in our middle schools, we were really looking for a prevention curriculum to target our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and evidence-based, really wanting to look at how do we prevent kids from ever, taking that first smoke of a cigarette or, trying marijuana. And what we saw, the data showed that really between 7th and 8th grade and 8th and 9th grade, those numbers spiked like so much higher than between the other grade levels. So targeting middle school really looked like the right thing to do. So last year, we were able to partner with Elevate through a grant that they received to provide this curriculum in a public school. And they approached us to ask us if we would be interested. And so this year, we were able to we actually just finished implementing the 10-week curriculum in Horning just before the Christmas break, I believe, was the last lesson. So all 6th graders were exposed to that curriculum, so over 200 6th graders. Next year, we'll be doing 6th grade and 7th grade at Horning. And then the following year will be 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. So it's a curriculum that builds upon one another. And it really is social emotional learning as well. So we're looking at not just drug education, but we're looking at decision-making skills, peer pressure, that social skills, study skills, all those types of good, positive things as well. A health educator from Elevate actually comes into our schools and presents that information, so our teachers aren't stretched to provide one more thing to our students. So we actually thought that was really a nice benefit of partnering with Elevate through the grant that they received, because our teachers are asked to do a lot, and so they're still present in the room and engaged. And I observed at Horning a very engaged teacher in classroom during one of the last lessons, and I thought it was being done very well. So. Butler, we've got Butler Middle School on board for 2nd semester. Their 6th graders will all be receiving those 10 lessons. And so again, next year they'll have 6th and 7th grade, and we'll build upon that. We're hoping to secure additional funding to include Les Paul for next school year. And actually, we just received word today that funding is available through the county now. And so we will be able to add them. So we're excited about that. So always looking, so since I work with our solely with our at-risk population at East and the abeyance program, always really looking for not just prevention, but really early intervention efforts, and trying to see what we can really do to impact that demographic. A lot of our students in our abeyance program or that are on pre-expulsion orders are due to a drug or alcohol violation, and Luke and I have talked at length about the need for services for that population, and really struggling to kind of between the psychoeducation aspect and like not to cross over into the therapy aspect. But we also know that our students and families often struggle with accessing those resources due to financial constraints or lack of insurance and those types of things, or just sometimes follow through as well. So we started, Ms. Kozak, Becky Kozak and I really started to brainstorm of what can we do to maybe pilot a small group of students in the abeyance program this coming semester to provide education and kind of address those issues and start to kind of move the students into a different stage of change around thinking about maybe changing some of those behaviors, and definitely not treatment, but just starting to think about the risk in those types of behaviors and what the consequences might be, since they've already received some of those. So we're going to be utilizing a free curriculum that's Drug-Free World, and I used it in a previous district with small groups that I did, and I thought it was okay. It's a little, like the videos are really great. The worksheets the kids didn't like so much. So what we decided to do is really use a restorative practice circle, much like the community circle that we heard from our Hillcrest group, to actually really kind of process that information and ask questions versus kind of like the pen and paper kind of stuff. So using those circle processes and just to really kind of educate and get kids talking about kind of the whys and the hows and like what needs to happen in order to want to make a change. We're also looking for some additional funding and resources to serve that subgroup of students. to expand out to the home high schools as well that haven't been placed at in the abeyance program. Is there anything you wanted to add about that?
I think that's good.
Okay. So as part of my role, I also coordinate the youth risk behavior survey that all of our 7th through 12th graders take. It now will be every other year. In the past, it has been every year, and that seems to be a little too much, and it's kind of draining for our high schools, especially to try to find the time to make sure that all 4 grades get the survey. And really the data is really rich. I appreciated the data last year, especially coming into the district, kind of to know where we're at. But now DPI has put some new guidelines so that it's much more mainstream and that all districts are surveying with pretty much the same questions and the same grades and the same times. So right now we're rolling that out. The window opens on February 15th, goes through March 25th, if I remember right. And schools kind of have that flexibility to take days within that window to survey their students. It's online, and hopefully with our new system through DPI, the data will be much easier to disseminate than it was last year. And then just some other goals that we have moving forward is there is an AODA grant that was just released through DPI. We're planning to figure out what we want to do for that and apply by April of this year. I'm really excited about that because I feel we get to be creative a little bit and really maybe hit some of those goals of, with a subgroup of students who have had pre-expels for that violation, that we could really serve those well in bringing some more resources in. We also want to just increase just the information about education and prevention to staff and parents. So whether that's through newsletters or emails or presentations at the schools, for staff and parents, we're really looking to increase that. So parents are really aware, about the truth about especially about vaping, because this is really just kind of exploded, and parents don't always understand that it is still nicotine, it is still very addictive, and students often put other substances in those vape pens too. So just increasing that education, and then also just assisting schools in the planning of the distribution of information. So I'm really working with our peers groups in each school to do that as well. And we also want to use our Peers for Peers groups more to also supplement the Too Good for Drug curriculum, where they're going down to the middle schools and actually presenting to the middle school students as peer role models for those students. And that I know we had a group from South that went to hire and helped present a anti-bullying campaign. So that's kind of already in the works, but we're looking to expand that. And then by June 2020, I would like to have another district-wide presentation for parents and community members. Before I came, I know Stairway to Heroin, right? Yep. Okay. Was presented, and I know that it was pretty well received and had good attendance. And so we're looking to have something that would, again, be an interest to the community and a need for parents. It's always just a struggle, I feel, to get parents to come. But looking at something that would, and maybe even, actually I did meet a parent that's very adamant about getting other parents involved. So trying to, do some of those grassroots things to get our parents more involved and informed.
What questions do you have for that? There's a lot of information, but there's been a lot of good things happening in 2 years, as you can see.
I don't have a question. I'm actually awed at how much you're doing in this area that I didn't think we were aware of, and I compliment you on it. It's obviously a serious problem. We've known that, but I think all the activities you've shown us, Jody, probably have gone over our heads, but now we at least know who we can talk to.
And I am really passionate.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I feel I came here. Number one is because I love working with the alternative school population, and also because I really enjoy that community networking piece and building partnerships, with other organizations to serve our students the best way that we can. And I have to say, it's been amazing here in Waukesha County, and I feel worked in Milwaukee County for 20 years, and so like the resources are there, but they're just harder sometimes to get to because everyone's fighting over them. So here it's just really been a great experience and a lot of support from the district as well. So I appreciate that.
Excellent. Mrs. Brzezinski.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One of the weekly sessions held, students have classes, and I'm wondering how you get this in, before school, after school, lunch hour.
So it is because the lessons are about 45 minutes long.
Yes.
So the school, basically the SAIL team or the SST team gets together and brainstorms where can they pull. So it's, I believe at Horning it was a science or social studies class that they did, take that 45 minutes for those 10 weeks, and it was the same class, so it was, a regular schedule. And that is always a struggle, and definitely working with administrators, we are very sensitive to that because they need to get their academics in as well, but we also feel that it's just really important, to take that time, and it's not a year-long course or a semester-long course, so.
So you said 45 minutes, is that once a week or?
Once a week, yep.
For 10 weeks?
For 10 weeks.
Okay, okay. And then other than the parent and the community members, how else do you inform parents and community other than what you're doing personally? To make sure that you touch base with all parents.
So that's been a struggle, I think.
A lot of schools do some of their own messaging, right, when they have incidents or high numbers of vaping and things like that. I know messages have gone out from individual principals and things like that. But our messaging has more been, around our collaborations with drug-free communities, like the Heroin and Opiate Guide, and more educational, informational messaging that has gone out.
Yeah, and when we did have like different events going on or different they were placed in all the announcements for the high schools, and so parents have access to those on Infinite Campus.
What do you mean by announcements?
So like the daily announcements that go out for students and parents, that was posted, like all the information was posted for several weeks about.
Parents get daily announcement information.
On Infinite Campus.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because I asked about, can we just email everybody? They're like, oh no, they already have the link to like go on for the announcements.
And hopefully they access it.
Hopefully they access it, yes.
Okay. Well, I just think that this is a phenomenal effort on behalf of the district, recognizing, of course, that there are issues out there. And that's so important for us to say, yes, we have concerns because, yes, there are some issues out there. And but you're not just interested in touching students that are dealing with issues, but you have this for everyone.
I really do.
I know you do. And so therefore, all students know, and hopefully all parents recognize what we're doing and that there is something going on to prevent and to help, stop what's going on regarding drugs and alcohol. I'm very impressed with what you're doing. A lot of hard work. Keep going, because we can't do enough in that vein, really.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, our next information item would be our social studies curricular update and Act 31 implications. Ominous. Yeah. Doesn't it? Act 31. Welcome, Dee.
Hello. Wish me luck. Try to get online. Thank you. Got it. Yeah, I'm wondering about how to get out of this view. Does anyone know? Yeah, would you? That'd be helpful. Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. Stacy's going to take over. Yep. Great. Well, I'm just going to get started and we'll catch up. Good evening. Thanks for having me. I know it's rare to see me in front of you for social studies, but Dan, Melissa, and I have been working together to become educated on some of the changes that the state of Wisconsin has made in terms of updating social studies standards. And so tonight we'd like to give you a forecast of where we're at. How's it going, Stacy? Yeah, I'm off. Okay. All right, we're just going to go straight away. So about a year ago, the state of Wisconsin began to revise Wisconsin social studies standards and considered a few resources in doing so, which came from the National Council for Social Studies 3C model for college, career, and life readiness skills. The National Curriculum Standards for Social Studies were consulted. There are a variety of organizations for the teaching of economics, teaching of behavioral sciences, and geography teachers associations, as well as the College Board that were consulted in the creation of our new adopted social studies standards. The standards were released first January 31st, 2018 and became adopted into our state repertoire back in May, and so we've had them since then and have just begun to have some learning around them. At this point, the state of Wisconsin has suggested to us and very strongly suggested that we adhere to a 3-year rollout phase with our social studies standards. This is a really great opportunity for us to implement our curriculum design process, to build for the first time an opportunity to really deeply understand the shifts in the standards. The shifts in the standards are things that I'm going to be discussing with you tonight, just in brief, and we will certainly go into that further as the year unfolds. So the first year, the state has said, know your standards well, build your coalition, build the capacity of your teams. The second year will be led through with the support of our state supports through curriculum development and design. And then the third year, we'll be looking at aligning our common assessments here in the district to the state's assessment of social studies, which will be reviewed and then updated through the state forward assessment. So tonight we'll be talking about the first phase in understanding. I'll address the shifts in the pedagogy and methodology, shifts in standards, increased demands on students in terms of rigor. I'll address just very lightly how literacy, environmental education, and American Indian studies are addressed. Next. So one of the first things that we did is we started to assemble a list of team members that we would like to bring together to help us in this work. And in total, we have about 30 members on a team that is set to begin work yet this month. They include administrators, teachers from kindergarten through grade 12. They include English as a second language teachers, dual language teachers, special educators, and as well as directors. We have 3 or 4 sessions planned this spring to get into a deep delve in some of the shifts that you'll see next, and get them aligned to standards to begin to do the hard work. So there are about 5 instructional shifts that we want to focus on. The first is that the state of Wisconsin, using the resources that I mentioned before, has made a big commitment to using inquiry as an instructional framework, and that all of the skills, dispositions, knowledge, and understanding will be acquired through that inquiry lens, such that social studies is going to feel and be a lot more integrated than it had in the past. In the past, you might see an economics unit, you might see a voting unit. Those units won't be the same. In the future, there will be units that will deal with geography, economics, civics, and behavioral sciences simultaneously through that lens. The progression of social studies will be a K-12 progression. There will be 27 standards as opposed to the seemingly several hundred that we had before. We did have a lot of standards. So 27 common standards between kindergarten and 7th and 12th grade that gradually roll up in their rigor, their depth, and their requirement for student learning. We will continue to have the 6 bands of study. The bands are behavioral sciences, economics, geography, civics, history, and the 6th band is inquiry. So we'll move on to what inquiry is next. The inquiry strand will be the one that pulls all of the other 5 together. Students will move through a scaffold that is developmentally appropriate, that moves from a very structured inquiry that they might do as a class, all the way through to a completely free or independent inquiry that a student might do independent of classmates and or teachers. All students are going to be engaging in questioning, researching, analysis of evidence. All of our kids will have to communicate their findings and conclusions, which is really critical, and I think linked to some of the special things you saw the Hillcrest students bring today. And then the other thing that might be a little bit different for us is that all of our students will be guided to engage in developmentally appropriate civic engagement. We realize as a state, and I think as a nation, the importance of having our students become involved and see themselves as powerful actors in shaping the society that we live in, and certainly that has been included in the standards. And then just to wrap up, new information tonight, we did want to readdress the implications for Act 31 as at your request. There was a question about how American Indian Studies would be integrated into this. What I can say definitively is that we have talked about law, and there are two things to remember as a result of today's learning. The first is that American Indian Studies will focus only on Wisconsin tribes and Wisconsin Native identity, and as well as really protects the instructional integrity around tribal sovereignty. So that is right there in the statute that you have underlined and in bold, so that you can make reference to that should you be asked in the community. And we're going to go to the last slide. This is where we're at in year one, just embarking on this journey of social studies. And I'd like to open it up to your questions and or comments.
Questions? Comments? Mrs. Brezink.
Well, Dee, I'm so impressed with where we're going with social studies and how much broader it's going to be, and how much better the adopted revised set of standards are. You know, that it's just going to contain so many more important concepts that kids need to learn and to adopt into their life. So I would love to have a copy of those academic standards. You know, if you could get that to me, I find that extremely interesting, and the instructional shifts too. I just would love to, you know, get into that a little bit more, just from my own personal understanding. I'm just really, really impressed. So this is going to be going on throughout the state of Wisconsin in social studies.
Right, and the standards are already posted on the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction's Social Studies website, as are all of the laws that you might be interested in perusing. So if anyone, a listener, is out there and would like to see those standards, they are available for free and public access.
So would you say that this year we're probably focused on understanding the standards?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What they are, what they say, and how they develop over time.
Sure. And then communicating what? Some of the standards to the students.
Our team of 30, we're really focusing on building the capacity of that team to really understand the instructional shifts.
Sure.
It wouldn't be unusual or surprising to me that some of our staff might be shocked and or surprised by some of the shifts.
Sure.
We want to make sure that we have kind of boots on the ground and voices that can really put people at ease while they might experience some change. And so the focus is really on building the capacity of that group. But as I said, the standards are available for free public access. Anyone can get them. At this point, we aren't looking into building common knowledge of all of our staff, but that will certainly be part of our curriculum design process as we move forward.
I'm really impressed. Our kids are really going to have a much broader background, stronger understanding. Great.
Mr. Dietz.
Do you think there's going to be any direct link to the new standards to the forward exam?
Yes, the third year.
I think people see the social studies section of that forward exam testing at the different grade levels as more of a reading test.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Our DPI consultant has been very clear with us that the state assessment will be realigned in year 3, as you can see on the visual, specifically to address the skills, the social studies skills. And when we mean by skills, we mean looking at the skills of the behavior analysis, economics, geography, history, et cetera. It won't be based on content itself. And I think that's going to be a shift for some of our instructors. When we think about it, students might be in a situation to experience content that they haven't yet been presented in the classroom and have to manipulate that content to problem solve. And as I said, move through that cycle of inquiry, which is going to be what's assessed.
I think it gives a lot of importance to the standards themselves if we're actually going to be assessing those down the road. So I'm glad to see that that's a shift and a change. So thank you.
Bumgarp.
You focus on inquiry as one of the ways of getting things started up here. We're already using that in a number of places, but is it being used is it being used outside of the social studies more than it is within the social studies? Because it sounds like you're saying that's pretty new to the social studies part.
Well, it's new to social studies only because social studies is on the plate right now. If you can remember what we just went through with our next generation science standards, science has already moved into the inquiry realm where you can see our own standards are less about the content, the vocabulary, and things like that that could be looked up, and more about the process of engaging with science and figuring out bigger ideas. Our social studies consultant feels very similarly. I think it's a trend in education that what can be looked up on Google does not need to be taught in the classroom, that those things can be learned through inquiry and through a student's own research. And certainly we're moving towards a more skill-based content balance than we've ever had before in social studies.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brezink.
I'm assuming there's not a textbook, is that correct?
At this point, we haven't had any guidance on textbooks. We have looked at several websites to help build our background in inquiry and help to understand a little bit about what integrated units of instruction look like.
Sure.
So, but we have not yet gotten to the point where we're looking at resources.
So what do teachers get? A list of skills and concepts to teach or units?
No, we're not really quite there yet, Barb.
Okay.
So we are really at the phase of trying to understand and really address the content of our standards so that we know exactly what we want to achieve with our students before we choose a resource that helps us to do it.
Sure, makes sense.
And we're taking a slow process. We're really following the state's lead that slow and steady here is going to mean something that is much more I think that has more depth and lasts longer than just a one-shot
Excellent.
decision.
You will see the iterations of our progress very frequently over the next 3 years.
Great.
So
That's great.
this will be a reoccurring topic.
An interesting topic, yes. Thank you.
And you'll likely see many more faces because we have organized plans to support a lot of different people.
Great.
Excellent. Anything else?
Great.
Thanks much, Dave.
Thanks.
Stuff is right.
Pretty. Next up on our information items would be revisions on feedback and reporting.
All right, good evening.
Good evening to you.
I'm going to kick off the introduction here. We're here to provide an informational update. As you may know, we had feedback given to the teaching and learning group, and so our standards-based grading team and three of the 9 principals who serve on that team are here tonight to specifically talk about the idea of retake and give an update on how assessments and multiple opportunities to demonstrate proficiency have been talked about with this team, while the belief and philosophies have remained consistent. We are a reflective group and made some updates to clarify the language, to kind of draw your attention. The attachment, which talks about those updates, those revisions, has 2 copies, the original document with the strike-throughs and then the revisions. And so the team tonight of Faith, Ryan, and Becky are going to go through these next few slides here to talk more detailed around what those clarifications in revisions are. So start off with Faith.
So obviously we're part of a bigger group, and everybody had a voice in this process, and we met throughout the month of December to connect and obviously used our digital resources also to connect and look at revisions and make sure we had feedback from all of the different levels within our school district. and really kind of had a chance to reflect on our own practices and where we were seeing things across the district. So again, the question had been raised about the language, specifically as it relates to retake, and what is a retake, and what does that mean to different people, different teachers, and obviously to families and students. And so that's what we're going to do today, is clarify the best practices. The best practices haven't changed. They're still the best practices, and understanding that all of this does have an impact on college readiness.
As a group, we decided that it was really important that we don't just look at that 2.5 as a standalone. That is an entire chapter that has 4 other parts to it. So the 2.1 through 2.4, 2.1, that portion of the chapter talks about how the assessment should drive instruction and our instructional decisions in the classroom. So there's some clarity there. In 2.2, it refers to the clear learning targets and the rubrics that are very public and referenced with frequency, so students know what they're learning and why they're learning that and how they're being assessed. And 2.3, regarding risk-free opportunities to learn and demonstrate their learning and through formative assessments and the feedback process throughout. So we know as teachers, as we're walking around the classrooms, we're doing informal feedback. We're giving students feedback about where they are facing challenges and what they're good at. So 2.3 goes into a little bit more detail around that. And then all of those things, as students are experiencing those risk-free practices, that formative assessment, they will have a summative opportunity to demonstrate what they know and are able to do, and that's 2.4. And then 2.5 goes into what happens if they need another opportunity to do that. And so just to reference that entire chapter, we thought is important.
Diving into section 2.5 specifically, a student must receive multiple opportunities to demonstrate proficiency in what they know and are able to do. What that looks like, the student must have those multiple opportunities. It refers to the opportunities a student may be given in order to show proficiency. Teachers decide that a summative assessment is the final opportunity, provided that multiple formative opportunities along with timely developmental feedback have been provided. A student may be given an alternative means to demonstrate proficiency with accommodations as appropriate that will measure the same level of proficiency for the learning target. And a student has had the chance to demonstrate proficiency in a way that meets his or her needs. It doesn't mean unlimited opportunities.
Oh, that's outstanding.
So as part of this committee, we have continued to look at language throughout all of our media, as Faith said, in all of these areas to make changes. We have shared these out through WebExes throughout the course of the year. We'll continue to do that with these revisions. Principals take this information, share it with their staff members, and have conversations as they need to, as we update these and continue to move forward and improve our practices and the language around that. Questions that you have for us?
Well, I have, yeah, part of this makes me reflect back to many years ago when I was in school. And sometimes we didn't have to take the summative test if we did demonstrate proficiency before we got to that point. Is that possible here? Do you know what I'm talking about? Getting exempted? Is that a reality in this or not?
Well, there are multiple opportunities to show what you know and are able to do. So it depends on what the teacher has that look like.
Okay.
I don't know about exempting from an assessment, but definitely having different opportunities. So I think when you take a look at the alternate means for assessment, if somebody is really moving along at a higher level, you'd want to challenge them maybe in a different way. So you'd look at an alternate means of assessment. Doesn't mean that you exempt an assessment. We want to make sure that we're offering the ability for our students to extend their learning in every opportunity. So that's what that gives students ability to do through teaching.
Oh, absolutely.
So when you think about the question, makes me reflect on a test, a pencil and paper test, as opposed to doing a project. And so what we've talked about here is that demonstrating proficiency looks different than just a pencil and paper test where people may be thinking of it.
That's what I would hope you're saying.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
So then I think you're saying demonstrating proficiency can be done in different ways.
Absolutely.
Just not one way like it was one I went to school, there was the test, and you either made it or you didn't make it, and there weren't any further opportunities. But now, sounds like you're going to give kids more opportunities, but also different type of assessments to meet their needs. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Wow, that's incredible. Students can't help but be successful with those opportunities and options.
Our goal is to provide opportunities for students to put their best foot forward and show us what they've learned.
Yes, and there's different ways for them to do that. Wow. That's phenomenal. That really is. Is this would you say a nationwide effort, or is this a district effort?
Well, I'll speak to my colleagues who are sitting next to me who have been a part of the conversation longer than I have.
Yes.
Here in the district, it's been a conversation for a while now.
Wow.
Books, resources, we're not the only group doing this. And even as you mentioned, Barb, is this something that we're doing now? This policy has not changed. We just clarified the language.
Sure you have.
So this has always been something that we've been doing in this district.
Well, it's great for our students.
Any professional development opportunities I've had or gone to throughout our country through AVID or in the state of Wisconsin always has a section on standards-based grading. So it is something that is not just Waukesha, but
Sure.
we definitely were probably pioneering that many years ago when much of this language was put into play.
Wow, I'm just so impressed with the opportunities for student success. It's pretty incredible. Nice job. Wow.
Mr. Dietz.
How do you respond to the student or parent that, let's say there are two math teachers at a given school, and one teacher offers retakes and one does not offer retakes? To me, the teacher that offers retakes, the student might have the opportunity to get a better grade on that particular assessment. Is there something I'm missing with that, or I'm sure you could explain that to me a little bit better. But if I have the opportunity for a retake, I think that benefits me more, gives me a better chance of getting a higher grade in that class or on that assessment. Is that correct or not correct, or somewhere in the middle?
So how I would take a look at it, so the multiple opportunities refers to, let's say there's 6 assessment opportunities within a class.
Right.
Those opportunities, you can call them formative or summative, but the expectation through this policy is that those opportunities are given and feedback is given throughout that process. So if that means that through communication, a teacher states, this will be the last opportunity for you to show us what you know and are able to do, that's where it would end. It's not unlimited opportunities. So that could be the 6th assessment where they would have 5 opportunities before that. Another teacher could say, this is calling it a summative assessment, utilizing language to say, but you may have the opportunity to do a retake. It is, again, another opportunity to provide evidence of what they know and are able to do. The way that we grade is looking at that evidence. It's not calculated on, it's not a calculated grade, it's a body of evidence. So what is the pattern that is seen through the evidence in that learning target? And those 6 opportunities may be used, different language may be used in those opportunities, formative or summative or retake, but at the end of the day, the opportunity still exists to show proficiency.
I think to kind of synthesize a point that Ryan had talked about, we, as a district, we declare grades, so it's not calculated. So one teacher may say, my way of providing a multiple opportunity is a retake. Another teacher might say that you may not have made it at this point, but 6 weeks later, when we come back to this topic, you've demonstrated it, and so that's going to be where you are when I declare your grade, as opposed to having just saying 6 weeks earlier, this is where you were. It's taking into account the growth of the student in that. So the belief and the best practice still holds true in both those situations. It's just each teacher had flexibility to talk about that. And the principals and the teachers have those conversations, because I know that we communicate that out at the beginning of the year, and throughout the year.
And then how do teachers inform parents and students of their particular policy or their discretion? How do they do that?
There's a standard template that the teachers are to use for communicating their course syllabus that has standard pieces that are included regarding grading policies, which is our grading policies.
Right.
On the grading scale, as well as their philosophy on multiple opportunities.
And how would the average parent know to look at the syllabus for that?
That should be communicated home.
Okay.
Oftentimes it's on Blackboard if there's a Blackboard course,
Right.
or if it's through Infinite Campus on an announcement page.
Right, right. Sounds good. Thank you.
You know, just a little concern. So students know beforehand that if they don't do well on the first test, that there will be another opportunity. Is that correct?
Teachers as part of kicking off their course should be talking about the expectations and then clearly laying out how they are going to go about declaring grades for that.
I guess, you know, I wouldn't want students to think, I can blow the first test because, you know, she'll give it to me again. And some kids might do that.
Well, and as we can highlight in here, that the opportunity to demonstrate proficiency implies and it means that students are doing work all along the way. It is clear in the situation that if a student is seen they're doing nothing throughout, there's a different conversation that needs to be
Sure.
had
Sure.
well ahead of an assessment.
Okay.
So essentially, a retake, our district classifies as an opportunity to demonstrate proficiency. Just one way that we.
Exactly.
And corrections are also another way to, okay. So it's happening in the district is, I guess, what the initial question was.
Yep.
And you're assuring us that it is. It's just called something. It's not called a retake. It's called something. The district calls it something different.
Yes.
Or would it be good to say opportunity for student success by offering more than one chance? Maybe I'll do better the next time. You're going to give me an opportunity to do better. Is that kind of what it's all about?
Yeah, they're all opportunities. And I think the idea of a retake, a lot of times we may have the mindset that we're just retaking the exact same assessment.
Yeah.
Like this was kind of my practice, and now I get the feedback and I try it again. And in many cases, that's not even the case. It is a very different assessment.
Sure, sure.
And just like every multiple opportunity, that needs to be tied with some feedback to the student on how they improve their performance on that. And so that's the opportunity for teaching. The opportunity to show proficiency should come with opportunities for teaching.
So this is going on right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
right.
how have the students responded, generally speaking?
They've responded very well. I've had more positive communications with parents about the amount of communication that comes from teachers, from the course syllabus, to talk about what the practices are in grading, making sure that it's very clear that our teachers declare grades, messages are there, the policies are in place, so when they're having conversations about what's happening with the grade book and what that means for parents.
So therefore, you know, I just need to be really sure. So therefore, we're telling parents there is an opportunity for a student to do better or get a better grade by retaking if you don't do well the first time.
It depends. It's teacher-driven. So, for example, going on to college or in the real world, there is not always a retake opportunity.
No.
And so certain teachers with the multiple opportunities can clearly state with communication that this is the final opportunity.
Okay.
There will not be other opportunities. Prior to that, you would want, as Faith said, feedback to have occurred, coming back, formative assessment along the way, little snapshots of what the student knows is able to do. They can grow through instructional strategy, and then the goal is to show growth in that learning target. And they may have a final opportunity, or a teacher may say, you may have an opportunity for a retake, but you may have to meet certain criteria. So as they go through that retake, then they can come back with corrections. Again, another opportunity to grow and learn.
Yep, I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you. So they know in advance that they may or may not have another opportunity. Okay, great. I like that.
Ready? Anything else?
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you spending time with us.
I'm impressed.
Rudy, we do not have any discussion items on the agenda. Other business would be, anybody have any recommendation for future committee meetings? Anything? Let me know if you do.
Sounds good. Cookies or what?
What kind?
Oh,
No raisin? All righty. So the next teaching and learning meeting is scheduled for February 5th, 2019 in the boardroom. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.